Hi guys, and welcome to join me in this bullet journal half-year setup video. If you're new here, my name is Anna and today I'll take you through this dreamy clouds inspired beginning setup in my new journal. So I like to use my bullet journals for 6 months at a time because it makes the most sense to me to start a new journal in the beginning and then in the half point of the year. And it's also pretty much the time I fill one of these roughly 160-page journals. This time I decided to go back to a trusty Archer & Olive notebook. I've done a review of these in the past if you want to check it out. And I think this exact color was actually sent to me last year and I'm pretty sure it's not available anymore. But I thought it would have been such a waste not to use it at all since I have it. But I'll list some similar color options they currently have to the description for you guys. And some of you might know that I am an affiliate with Archer & Olive, as I am with some other notebook companies as well. And I have a discount code which will always save you 10% if you shop on their website. I don't always mention the discount codes in the videos, but they are always listed in the video descriptions if you're interested to use them. And to be completely transparent, they benefit me a little bit as well. And the support is always highly appreciated, but still no pressure whatsoever. But I think that's enough about the new journal, and now let's open this up and start from the first page. There are no pre-printed pages in these Archer & Olive notebooks, so I just started to add something very simple to this first page here, kind of just to indicate that I'm using it from the July to December this year. I have this one old scribble style washi tape that I'll be using in just a few pages in this setup. If you don't have it, don't worry, we're not gonna use it too much. And then I also decided to use this technique I often like to use when I want to add some solid colors to my themes, which is to create and print out these color palettes on a white sticker paper. I'll add a link to the description where you can go download these color palettes for free if you happen to have a printer at home. I think this is just a very easy way to avoid buying tons of washi tapes or colorful craft paper. So that's why I often like to use this method in my videos. But anyway, I just wanted to create this very minimal beginning title here with the year and some sparkles to start the journal. And after that, we can flip over to the actual first spread. So as I mentioned in the beginning, I wanted this yearly setup to kind of have this dreamy clouds and skies inspired theme, but still be very simple and neutral as well. So I actually went ahead and created this light cloud painting to this page with watercolors and white gouache and used it as a background to write my word of the year that I already chose in January. So I took out a piece of watercolor paper and started to create this very light wash of these lilac, yellows and neutral tones. I usually like to keep the beginning pages of my journal a little bit more simple because they are the ones that I'm gonna use for the whole time I'm using this journal, and I want them to be pretty functional and mainly just serve their purpose. However, this time I felt like decorating the pages a little bit more than I've done in the past, while still keeping everything more on the minimal side. So I think that was the inspiration also behind this little bit bigger watercolor painting. I wanted this first wash here to be very smooth and blown out. And after letting it dry, I started to create some darker spots for the clouds. Nothing needs to be super clean or perfect in the painting like this, and I was just trying to avoid any harsh edges as much as possible, but otherwise get everything very loose and relaxed. And after the second layers had dried, it was time to start adding some cloud textures over everything with the white gouache. I noticed that these first layers of white kind of blended to the background a little bit because I was mixing a little bit more water in it in this point, but actually in the end I thought adding those more translucent layers made everything look very soft and fluffy, and then I just kept intensifying the white paint on the very top parts of the clouds and to hide some of those harsher lines there as well. I wasn't trying to keep these too round or symmetrical or anything like that. I was definitely going for a little bit more of that realistic, fluffy cloud effect. And I think this white gouache worked really well for that. This was actually such a fun and pretty quick painting as well, and I really liked the colors. So after I was happy with everything, I just cut out the white borders and attached this to my journal with double-sided tape. My word for this year is courage, so the next step was to write that to the top part, and then I also added this short quote or poem by Atticus that I thought suited the courage theme very well. I chose to print it out because I thought this style went very well with the whole aesthetic here, but you could always just write it out yourself and save the effort. But now that we have this page here to kind of set the mood for the rest of the setup, I moved on to the next page, and here I just wrote out all the calendars from July 2021 to June 2022. These pages are always a little bit tedious to write, and it's also very difficult to avoid any mistakes, but I think having the whole year laid out like this is very helpful when you're trying to plan something ahead. And here you can also see all the calendars when you're setting up the monthly layouts later. Also, one thing I want to point out for any new bullet journalers out there is that it's perfectly normal to draw or sketch out the pages with pencil before going in with a black pen that you can't erase anymore. I still write out most of the titles and figure out the spacing of everything with a pencil because otherwise I would do so many mistakes. So yeah, no need to be embarrassed about that at all. But now that we have this first full spread ready, let's move on and flip over to the next one. So next I wanted to add a future log, which is a place to write down any appointments from the upcoming months when you haven't set up the monthly layouts yet. Then from here, you can move any dates and appointments to the monthly calendars when you have those ready. I wanted to switch up the font here a little bit and go for this bigger and bulkier font that's called American Typewriter. So I just searched this font from Google Images and copied the style of the letters here. And then I colored them a little bit loosely with a black pen. There are also many different stamps and tools out there to create these types of letters. So if you don't have the time or patience to do it yourself, you could always look into buying something like that. But I usually like to show you how to create everything from scratch as much as possible in these videos. So that's why I avoid using stickers or stamps. But anyway, after another set of these monthly calendars here, you can see me drawing these pencil squares under the calendars. And I thought it would be fun to use these as small color palettes for each monthly layout I'll be setting through the rest of the year. I think it would be fun to see how often I use the same colors and maybe give me some ideas for new color combinations to try out in the future. And then, since I never need the whole page for the future log, I decided to use the bottom part of this page for some monthly stats I like to track. For me, this has a lot to do with my YouTube and Instagram followers or how many orders I got from the shop. And now you also might notice this small Patreon sign here. It's actually starting today when you're watching this video. I'm finally opening up a Patreon. I don't want to spend too much time talking about it here, but if you're not familiar with it, Patreon is a website where I can offer you some extra content and products for a monthly subscription fee. I currently have only 2 tiers, a $2 and $5 one, but I'll be adding a third one sometime in the following months. You can find all the details of what's included in each tier by visiting patreon.com/journalaway, and that link is also in the description. And I just want to assure you guys that this is completely optional and an extra thing. Nothing on this YouTube channel will change, so this is just for those of you who've been wishing for this option to get some extra content from me and are also comfortable supporting me as a small full-time creator. But yeah, that's about that. I'll write a little bit more about it in the description. But I think that's it about the future log, and now let's move on to probably my favorite part of this setup, which is the yearly goals section. So I actually used 2 spreads for this whole setup here and started everything by cutting out these Dutch door pages. And after that, before getting into the layout itself, I wanted to decorate this top part of the page a little bit. So I started by ripping out this scribble washi tape again and used it as a background for the top part. I just love this washi tape so much because it basically goes with any colors and suits so many different themes without being anything overpowering either. But you can also achieve a very similar effect by ripping out a page from an old book or newspaper, or just scribbling something to a white paper or directly onto the page. But anyway, next I reached out for the colorful papers that I printed out again and used it as a background to write this goals title. I made it a little bit thicker so it will stand out against the other titles in these pages and also against the scribble washi tape at the top. Then I moved on to the left side, and here I just created this very small wash with watercolors. I wanted to connect this somehow to the cloud theme, so after letting this simple wash dry, I cut this piece of paper to a little bit smaller size and then created some more clouds with the same white gouache. I also added some white dots to the page and also this white moon. And I first thought to just leave it here, but I thought the white details were a little bit too light against the background. So that's why I just decided to line them with black and make this a little bit more cartoony style. And then as a last step to this top part, I wanted to add this short quote which says, "The sky is no longer the limit," which I thought went super well with the theme and also the whole yearly goals idea. But anyway, after that we can start to work with the lower part of these pages. So you might be wondering what I'm gonna do with a yearly goals section in July. But I actually think that the half point of the year is a very good time to look back to your goals, and maybe sometimes you even need to hit a restart. There's nothing wrong about changing your goals or coming up with new ones if the ones you set up 6 months ago just don't really serve you anymore. So that's what this whole reflection section is for. I think it's so important to just be honest with yourself of where you currently stand and what you're actually able to take on your plate in these next few months. I've noticed time and time again that I tend to set too high expectations for myself, and that leads to nothing else than not feeling good enough and being less and less motivated over time. This is actually one of the things where bullet journaling has helped me the most, and slowly, if you keep tracking this stuff, you start to realize that if you actually want to start something new in your life on a good foundation, it's a long process with 1% improvements at a time. And I just wanted to share this with you because I know I'm not alone with this, and maybe it's something you needed to hear as well. But yeah, kind of following up with that on this next page, where I set only 5 main priorities for myself for the rest of this year, and these can be bigger or smaller things. But then before moving on to the next pages, I actually finished the Dutch doors here. I've seen some people doing these colored edges to their Dutch doors. Well, mainly Lila Journals. She's one of my favorite bullet journal creators at the moment. And nowadays she's also here on YouTube, so definitely go check her out. But I think doing this and then rounding the corners gave such a cute and more finished look to this whole spread. I have this corner rounding tool, but you could of course do the same thing with scissors. But if you're interested in buying one of these, you can find some from Amazon for like $10 or less, and I think it's a pretty helpful tool to have. But then back to the goals. So I always try to make everything as practical as possible on these pages. So here I gave myself room to write down some small action steps that can be related to the 5 main things, or be something much smaller, even some bucket list type things. And I decided to divide these into business and then personal life related stuff. Then the last Dutch door spread here will be for some more reflection type stuff. So first, I've just left myself some empty space here to write any notes or thoughts if I happen to have any about the yearly goals moving forward. And then on the last page, I wanted to change things up a bit in terms of the layout and add some colorful paper again, and this time give it this fun grid shadow thingy using my light gray Tombow brush pen. I titled this box In My Ideal Life, so maybe this could work as some kind of thinking exercise of what your ideal life could look like. And maybe that might even help you to shape your yearly goals. Sometimes doing these types of exercises really makes you realize that we only have this one life and that we have so many more choices to shape it to the way we want than we sometimes even let ourselves to believe. But yeah, I don't know what yearly goals pages always make me go down these deep existential waters, but anyway, we are now finally done here and I'm so excited to start to use this and see how it will work for me. But now let's move on. We still have 2 spreads left, and the first one will be also one of the more important sections in my bullet journal that I use on a monthly basis without exceptions. So this will be for the yearly or monthly budget and money tracking. And we are actually going to start this again by cutting out some vertical Dutch doors in the middle. But after that, I'm actually going to jump to a second watercolor wash, which was actually my first attempt for the cloud painting from before. But in this one, I was using a little bit cheaper watercolor paper. And it just didn't end up being what I wanted for the cloud painting. I think there are actually quite a few cases where more expensive paper actually makes a big difference, but this type of background wash is definitely one of them. I hope you can see how there are just more stripes on this paper and somehow the colors just didn't melt together the way they did with the better paper in the end. But regardless of not really liking this for the cloud painting purpose, I didn't want to just throw this one away either and instead decided to use it on the sides of this budget spread. I think it might have looked a little bit nicer to have the painting size cover the whole page from top to bottom without the margins that mine left here, but I settled with it because honestly I was too lazy to paint another wash. Anyway, I created these similar colorful edges to the middle Dutch doors again and also rounded the corners. And after that, we can actually start to fill this spread in. So I started with another one of these American typewriter titles and just wrote budget here over the painting. I actually considered adding some more clouds or other details to these watercolor washes, but then just settled with some white and black sparkles instead, just to keep everything a little bit more simple and easy. But after that, I started with the middle part of these pages, and on the first column here, I decided to leave a place to calculate all our monthly fixed expenses. So this would be stuff like the rent, internet bills, maybe any subscriptions, and then I also have some expenses related to my shop and YouTube channel that I'll calculate separately under the business total in the bottom. But then let's move on to the Dutch door pages. And here I will just use one page for each month where I list my monthly income and calculate any savings and so on. You might not need this much space, but my income is quite shattered into small streams from many places, which are also paid to different accounts. So to keep all of that somewhat organized, I like to have a place like this where I can see everything in one place and calculate it together. And I think I say this in every setup video, but I think especially money and budget related stuff is very personal to everyone. What I do might not be the right fit for your life, so I encourage you to think about your own situation and come up with some variables that would be beneficial for you to write down and keep an eye on. Maybe you have a monthly saving goal or some stocks that would be smart to check on a monthly basis. And then something I like to do as well is to always compare the amounts of money on my accounts to the previous month, so I know how much I've saved or if I maybe used too much. So I'll fill the rest of this later and also set up the other months. And then here on the last page, I thought there was just enough room to create a small wish list and also a place to check if I'm on track filling my tax information stuff that I now need to do on my own. I know this will be a very functional spread for me, so even if the edges were probably not my favorite, I didn't mind it too much and decided to just flip us over to the last spread of this layout. So lastly, something I always like to have on my yearly setups is some sort of place for any consuming related stuff like books and movies. I started this first page by adding some watercolor splashes around the box I'm about to draw here. I like to use washi tapes to secure areas like this because it ends up ripping the paper much less often than if I would use a painter's tape or something like that. I also first apply the tape once to my table before using it on the notebook because that takes a little bit of the stickiness as well. But yeah, so this first page will be from my reading list. So I will just create a list here of the name of the books, then when I started it, did I finish it, and also my rating. To be quite honest with you, the lack of books I've read this year makes me so ashamed of myself, but actually in the past month or so, I finally fell in love with reading again. I also read a bunch of Japanese manga, but the book series I'm currently reading is The Court of Thrones and Roses. I've enjoyed it so much. I'm almost finished reading the second book now. If you enjoy fantasy, adventure, and romance stories, but for the adult taste, I think you might like this one, though the beginning is a little bit slow and maybe not the best in my opinion. But as always, guys, please leave your best recommendations below, especially if you have anything like the Game of Thrones or Outlander. Let me know, I'm in a desperate need for new book series to discover. But then the second page I will just basically use for everything else. I feel like I haven't even watched movies or TV series in a long time and just always end up watching YouTube, but I still have hope that I might be able to change that. Anyway, I decided to go for the same colorful box style I used on the goals page. And this time, instead of listing everything by name, I will just do some simple counters for different categories and then leave room for the highlights to the bottom. This is especially because I read manga quite fast and I don't want to start listing everything here. So yeah, counters and highlights it is. But that finally wraps up this whole half-year setup. You could of course modify this for the whole year or start it in a later point this year. Anyway, I quite like the colors and how everything went together, and I can't wait to start this new journal. The July Plan With Me video will be up next week, and in the meantime, there's also a new painting tutorial up on the new Patreon page if you want to check it out. And if this was your first time here, please consider subscribing to the channel if you want to stay tuned for more. But other than that, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you're having an amazing day or night wherever you are. And see you in my next one. Bye bye.